Welcome to Name 3 Songs. I'm Sarah Fagan.
I'm Jenna Million, and this is a podcast where we discuss feminist issues in music and pop culture, all while empowering fangirls.
Because let's be honest, fangirls knew about that band way before you did.
We want to give a quick shout out to Nia for joining our Patreon. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. And you guys probably know that we've been talking about our 2024 predictions episode, which we have over on Patreon, which once again becomes relevant in today's conversation.
Yes, it does.
So if you guys have not heard our 2024 predictions episode, you can find that on Patreon at patreon.com/name3songs. Donate anything you want per month from $1 to $10. It's a great time. And there's lots of fun back content you can get access to as well.
So today we have a bit of a different episode, which I'm actually very excited about. My friend Matt Thompson from the band The Amazons is joining us today. We've known each other, I want to say, since like 2017. And how this kind of came to be was like very funny because we've always been like, oh, like Sarah, the photographer, the journalist, Matt, the singer of a band. And like we would hang out when they'd be in New York. And that was kind of like what our friendship was. I'm going to call Matt out here a little bit because I think it's hilarious. But I did notice about, I don't know, like a couple of months into 2021 that his band, The Amazon, started watching all of my Instagram stories. And I just like assumed it was like a bot to like make fans like feel like the band was engaged with their fandom because like they'd followed me on Instagram for a while. So I was like, oh, okay, like I'm like one of their earliest followers. Like it makes sense, whatever, you know? And so just like time went by. I didn't really think that much of it. It was like something Jenna and I would giggle about sometimes. And then they played Gov Ball in 2023 and I was doing press. and when I saw them in the Artist Village, we all, like the whole band was there. So it was like Matt, Chris, and Elliot. And I saw them and we were all like, oh my God, hi, it's been so long, whatever. And we're all talking and I'm like, guys, I need to call y'all out. Who's doing it? who's watching all my, who's the culprit? Who's watching obsessed? Who's watching all my Instagram stories from the Amazon's account? And Matt's like, oh, that's me. Like just fully, just like straight up was like, it was me. I'm not ashamed. And I was like, oh, cool. And he's like, your podcast is so cool. Like, I want to come on and I want to cause chaos. I want to talk about Matty Healy. And I was like, it would be an honor and a privilege. I would love for you to come on like a podcast and cause chaos and talk about Matty Healy. And I think we tick most of those boxes today.
I think it's just been fun because we've been trying to get Matt on since all of this happened, and he very much cares deeply about the types of stuff we talk about pop culture, about thinking critically, about where feminism ties into all of this and societal politics, all of it. And Sarah and Matt have been able to have some great discussions about it on their own. And so it was awesome to finally bring him into the fold and have him on to weigh in. Honestly, today we got to talk about a lot of different stuff. From our Fangirl Nonsense, talking about the Oscars, talking about Austin Butler's Elvis exit, Zac Efron being snubbed, as well as getting into, as Sarah mentioned, the conversation around Matty Healy and this really kind of weird back and forth with fans that we've constantly been seeing. And it's kind of resurfacing now that he's kind of back online, and digging into that also with Matt's perspective of being an artist and his band, The Amazons, having done this for quite a while in his lifetime. So it's really cool to bring his artist perspective into that. And then we're also talking about AI and what happened this past week with AI images of Taylor Swift being passed around the internet, Twitter being temporarily disabled from anyone searching Taylor's name, the US government maybe being involved. And there we get into a lot of really multifaceted discussions in relation to Taylor's power, in relation to what is happening with AI, pornography, male consumption of pornography, as well as the future of AI, what that means for artists. So it's really
everything
a gift today.
Yeah.
Everything is a gift for all of y'all.
Yeah, it definitely was like a really awesome conversation. And it was just really cool to have like a much different perspective than we normally would have on the podcast in regards to like who our guests normally are. So I'm very thankful that Matt gave us his time and spent the hour with us to have the conversation and really like think deeply about all of this stuff. Cause like Jenna said, we covered so much on so many different levels, and it was just like all around really awesome. And so I'm just really excited for everybody to hear this conversation we had today.
So if you want timestamps, it'll be on our Instagram stories as well as highlights. And with all of that, hi Matt, welcome to the show. We're excited for you to be here with us.
You know that I'm incredibly excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
I love that. Like always, we're going to kick it off with our fangirl nonsense. And I would like to toss the microphone over to you because I know that you have thoughts and feelings about what's going on with Oscar nominations and also Zac Efron.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Zac Efron is one of my personal most devastating snubs of the Oscar season. And actually the award season. I thought the Iron Claw was such a curveball for role for him. I know I've not really been that familiar with his work. I know he did the High School Musical stuff and a lot of like kind of bro-y comedies. I haven't seen a lot of them, but we went to see Iron Claw at the beginning of the year and was just completely bowled over by such a raw and very accomplished performance. Like he's in it a lot. He feels like the kind of anchor of the entire film, and he seems so immersed in the role. I think it's sometimes his kind of image up to this point might have, maybe people haven't wouldn't take his more dramatic roles as seriously as they should, which I think is a massive shame because it's so good. Watch it.
I literally like saw a singular clip and I was like, why am I sobbing? I don't even know what's going on here. I was like, this is so good. It's like all my friends just keep saying like, Sarah, you have to go see it because I love going to the movies. But I'm like, I also don't want to cry for 3 hours in the movies.
Yeah. And you know what? Why I loved it, it was so much fun and it's kind of at times a little bit campy and it's full of color and life and the soundtrack's amazing. And then it takes a bit of a turn and then it's this kind of descent into misery. But I like a really, but a really like potent comment on ultimately the patriarchy. Like these guys massively struggle with a certain type of masculinity to the point where they don't feel there's any other option. And you're just screaming at the screen, like, you don't have to do this. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to be the way that your dad wants you to be.
Yeah. On a lighter note, was he singing or dancing at some point in this?
Ooh, he does a lot of wrestling.
There was like, I just saw something on Twitter that was talking about like a dance number or something that happened
at the wedding. There's like a scene
people
from
were
the
like,
wedding where I think they're all dancing.
People were like,
that is, yeah.
If there's one thing Zac Efron's gonna do, he's gonna kill it in like the dancing. And then they were all talking about how he like deserved better in Hairspray and that he should like basically do another musical again.
Oh yeah, I could see that. He's definitely has that. He's that kind of triple threat, I guess.
We do have like less sad fangirl nonsense, which is that Barry Keoghan is at it again, meaning that he is just the people's princess, honestly. That's literally what he feels like lately, because every red carpet that he is on, everything that he is doing, all of the boys, all of the men that he is working with are all just like, we talked about this like a couple weeks ago, they're always all flustered by him. But he's promoting this like new Apple TV show that he's in with Dua Lipa's boyfriend, Callum something, and Callum Turner and Austin Butler. And they went to the White House today because the show is about like men in like the Air Force. And so they went to the White House like today or yesterday or something. And there's these pictures of him and Callum Turner. And there's this tweet that I saw that was like, first date at the White House. And then the quote tweet was like, this is just like an Amazon Prime movie I saw once. And it's like playing off of Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's so funny because it literally looks like they're on a date at the White House. And I'm obsessed with it.
It does. I've got the pictures up now. It's just two guys hanging out at the house.
Like, welcome to my crib.
Yeah. Funny. I'm reading a headline at the moment that says, Barry Keoghan fans confused as he cartwheels in White House.
That feels on
brand. I
brand.
did see those videos. I saw them on Instagram. One of the other guys in the show was posting them like in a carousel, and there's like these two like it's like these two like 5'8" actors just like doing cartwheels around the White House, and it's so funny.
Do you feel sometimes like, obviously you guys are so in touch with pop culture and the kind of cycles it goes through. It's almost to the point now where I'm almost afraid for most people having a like quote unquote moment that the backlash will inevitably come at some point.
Oh, I've already seen backlash on TikTok about Barry because Barry had a baby with a woman that he had been in a relationship with for a little bit, and they are no longer together. And so there are people like posting about how like, oh, like the second somebody gets some fame, they like leave the woman that was by their side for like something younger and hotter. And I was like, I don't
like Jeremy Allen White also.
Yeah. Yeah, because the conversation started with Jeremy Allen White, and then people in the comments were talking about Barry Keoghan and his baby mama. And I was just like, this is a lot. Yeah, so it is interesting. I feel like we as humans like automatically are just like haters to our core, no matter what we actually think about ourselves.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between like people kind of like stirring up a little bit of drama or discourse because of something like Barry having a kid and then not like marrying the baby mom or like whatever the case is, versus like someone being canceled because they were like an abuser of some sort. I feel like two very different scenarios in which maybe this is just being in the music industry and seeing the way that younger artists are coming up, but like the younger people are very much aware of like the skeletons of bands of yore and are very much like not repeating that. Whereas like a lot of these actors are like Barry's like 33 or something like that. So it's like he's someone who like could hypothetically have skeletons in his closet that we don't know about. But I feel like just with all the backlash that's happened in the past like 6-ish years as far as like Me Too movement and stuff, I think men are maybe coming to terms with being decent human beings. And like I feel like we're seeing less cancellation of people and more so people just like stirring up drama that's like not maybe as serious.
Yeah, right, of course. Yeah, that's interesting. Coming to terms with being decent human beings.
Knowing they can't get away with shit, you know?
Standards. I mean, definitely standards because, what would fly in the mid-2000s, as we're seeing with Justin Timberlake, probably wouldn't fly now. And then there's a lot of retrospective, I guess, judgment and kind of a reevaluating of situations, kind of revising situations and going like, oh, fuck, that was a bit weird, or like, that wasn't okay. And then just straight up revelations like Britney's autobiography of him singing. Is it, she's just had an abortion, is that correct? And she's in pain, and he's like, I'm going to serenade you. The truest, most potent Ken moment, to the point where you think, like, was that like an open secret among people in Hollywood, for example, and was a Greta like privy to that? Do you know what I mean? I was like, that is just so similar. Is that like a really kind of like, is that like a dig or something?
Yeah, but I do have an unfortunate truth to tell you that most girls who have flirted with any guy who plays guitar has had them sit at the end, have had them sit at the end of a bed and be like, I'm gonna play you Wonderwall or like something like that. Like it's whatever the song of the moment is. But Matt, I'm shocked you've never done that.
Why would you, of course, have done that? But I haven't since Barbie came out. I haven't touched an acoustic guitar around my girlfriend. It's just too loaded. It's too loaded.
Wait, so do you remember that TikTok? Or maybe Matt, I don't know if you ever saw this, but there's a TikTok of this girl and she's like talking to her like guy friend. Like it seems like they're not in a relationship. But she's like, I'm gonna list off I'm gonna read off a list of like icks about you. And she was like, I thought about you playing acoustic guitar at me. And he was like, I would never do that. And she's like, yeah, but I thought about it.
It's a good ick. It's a great ick. It's like masquerading as like, I'm gonna do this for you. I'm gonna create music, or I'm gonna serenade you. But really, it is
self-serving.
Give me attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why it works so well in Barbie.
Absolutely.
Which, like, also, I mean, if we're talking about Barbie, people are really mad that Ryan Gosling got nominated and none of the women did.
So how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I am one, honestly, like, Greta's been nominated for something before. Margot's been nominated for things before. Like, I just think, like, when we're realistically speaking, Margot's role as Barbie had absolutely no chance against specifically Lily Gladstone. And so I think like when you have the first Native woman ever nominated for best actress in a movie or like best female actor, whatever they're calling the category now, like Margot Robbie not getting nominated is like the least of our fucking worries. Like we should be celebrating something. But also it's like there were so many other really good movies, including like Past Lives, and Greta Lee wasn't nominated. And so I'm like, why are we talking about like the two whitest women in the room when like there were other women in like honestly like better movies? Like I love Barbie, but like realistically speaking, when you think about the Oscars, it's like I'm not really thinking about a movie like Barbie. You're thinking about like kind of like deeper, more meaningful films, at least from my perspective. And so I'm just like, why is this even the conversation we're having, to the point where Ryan Gosling's putting out like an apology for being nominated?
To me, it's like, Ryan Gosling wasn't competing to be nominated against Margot Robbie. Like that's not what we're comparing. Like Margot Robbie is competing against other like leading actresses in film. And so it's like, if there were other movies and actresses who like had a bigger impact, then they should be celebrated. So to me, it's less about them being snubbed over Ryan Gosling. It's like Ryan Gosling getting an award for this is separate from all of the impact that the movie had.
And America Ferrera?
Yeah, she got
Is that her
nominated.
name?
Yeah, she got
Oh yeah,
nominated
she
for
was
supporting actress.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess in that regard, I just really don't understand what people are mad about.
There's an element of like, because the evidence being that it was so successful at the box office, it's almost the big entry point for a lot of people who maybe only go and see a few blockbusters every year.
Right.
Like they saw Barbie, they felt like they were part of a pop culture moment, and it wasn't reflected in the way they wanted in the biggest film awards show that people still care about, still, whatever. And I wonder if just that's their kind of 2 cents in the debate about Oscars.
It's interesting from the conversation of having a huge blockbuster smash that like is a cultural conversation. Like there's difference between like being a cultural conversation and being a piece of art. And it's not to say that it's not a piece of art. It's just that like in comparison to the other films that have come out this year, like where does it stand in terms of prestige in what the like Academy or the Oscars are considering when they're considering films? Because it's like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like other films that have been like a cultural conversation that wasn't just like Marvel or Star Wars. Because it's like, you never really see those, like those films aren't going to be nominated, like even though they're a huge, massive moment. Like usually the soundtrack or like the costuming would get nominated. But it's like, was Barbie really on par with some of the other movies that were released this year as far as like the categories that the Oscar voting board is considering?
Could I add another thing that pisses me off about the Oscars?
Yes, please. Let's hear it.
Especially this year. I watched Maestro twice in the cinema, and I really don't understand the hate for Bradley Cooper. And I understand the try hard stuff, whatever, but I also just don't think that's the angle. I think basically it boils down to I hate the Oscar bait.
Yeah.
It's so dismissive.
Yeah.
It's so dismissive of like, and I know he's obviously, and this clip of him like, conducting, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, giving the whole, it took Bradley 6 years to come up with this, or, to prepare for this thing.
Yeah.
It didn't. It wasn't 6 years of 9 to 5 or anything like that. It was probably the seeds of the idea started 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And it obviously boiled up over time. Anyways, but yeah, I just don't understand. I don't like this, how dismissive of ultimately commitment and dedication, because that's what I, as someone who creates music, the one thing that really attracts me to whether it's actors or musicians, it's conviction and commitment, because that can be a real challenge. And I think he did that. And I liked it. It wasn't a perfect film, but I really loved the first half. I thought it was really, I like romantic films.
No, I think that's a really fair opinion. My assumption of why people like are like, oh, it's easy to clown him is because of like his history of filmography. Like I feel like he did like Wedding Crashers and just like a lot of movie like The Hangover that were like essentially comedy or rom-com or like adjacent movies. And then it's like, oh, now he's trying to be serious about his career, or now he's like taking more serious roles. So I feel like it lends itself to people clowning more, which is like the same thing kind of going back to like people are going to look for something to do that over because it's entertainment. And I think all of us are a little bit like mean-hearted and
everyone's a hater.
Everyone's a little bit of a hater.
Oh yeah, I just find me the right thing. I definitely love to hate stuff, or just go like, I don't get it, or like dismiss it, or be really reductive of it, or whatever.
But I think that's like a really valid point for you to bring up as far as like his commitment to the role and persistence in pursuing it and whatnot.
And it wasn't bad, and I didn't think during it like, oh, he's gagging for an Oscar. But I was like, oh, this is a really beautiful story. But I wonder if like people don't like it, that it's maybe don't relate to it or don't connect to it because it's based on like classical music.
Yeah.
And honestly, like a lot, that's not ultimately a fringe genre of music. I guess when you look like compared to obviously pop, hip hop, all that kind of stuff. So maybe people didn't kind of almost maybe it was the story, his execution, the way he attacked it, and just like the actual music itself just feels so lofty that people can't relate to it maybe. Or it feels a little bit Yeah, whatever. I liked it. Fuck 'em.
Well, I mean, I don't know. On the theme of just like people being haters to be haters, we also just have the whole like Austin Butler thing with the Elvis accent and how he's doing, as we already said, he's doing press for that TV show that he's in with Barry Keoghan. And literally, like, he was on the Stephen Colbert show and he was like, yeah, I had to get like a whole other dialect. Like, I had to get a new dialect coach to get rid of my Elvis accent, which is like so crazy. To be fair, like, I saw a couple TikToks where people were like, how can you be like good enough of an actor to become Elvis, but like not a good enough actor to like become yourself again? Which like I think is the which I think is like the only valid clowning of it. But I just feel like at this point, like maybe we all collectively as a people just forget what Austin Butler sounded like, and like this is just his voice. Like maybe we just forgot. Like he wasn't really that famous before now, so I'm like, who even knows what Austin Butler's voice sounds like? Not me.
He was in the Carrie Diaries. That's all I know.
It was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And to be fair, he was playing a kind of Texas Southern guy anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to carry on my spiel about commitment and dedication. I have nothing but respect for it. Because the guy in that very interview was talking about living, breathing Elvis for 3 years.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's like when you put it in the context of that, like it is like very respectable, like the work he put in for it. But like when you take it out of context, and the internet loves to take things out of context and just read headlines, like it's kind of funny. Like it's a little bit funny.
Yeah. Imagine forgetting what your own voice sounds like.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
But it's not just forgetting your own voice, it's becoming Elvis and not being able to take it off.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, in sort of fangirl nonsense, but less nonsense, a little more serious of a conversation, we're going to talk about Matty Healy, which feels like less relevant than it once was, but I do think his presence on the internet again is quite interesting and something to discuss, because he's been posting on his Instagram stories. He's like shit posting again after kind of being like, I am not a shit poster on the internet. And I'm like, okay, buddy. But also on top of that, it's like he's in this relationship with the model Gabriette, who is very cool and posts all these videos on her like TikTok and her Instagram and stuff of like her cooking and like all this stuff. And he'll make kind of like guest appearances where he's like not fully in the videos. Like there was one video where she was like baking cookies or something and she like cracked an egg on his head and everybody was like eating it up. And like they'll do other ones where he's filming her, so you'll hear his voice like talking to her and being like, oh, like how do you feel about eating a Greg's sausage roll and like stuff like that, where it's like making him feel more relatable and like likable again. And so it kind of feels a little bit like, even if he's not meaning to, it feels like he's like doing redemption work in regards to the fandom. And again, like everything Matty Healy does, I feel like is like he's planning it, he's thinking about it. Like I don't think he does anything by accident at all. And like I don't know what your guys' opinions on that is, but I just think it's interesting because I've seen just like a lot, like he's just so much back in like fans' good graces, even to the point where like I'm seeing fans on Twitter being like, I can't believe we like bullied him for dating Taylor Swift. He clearly was like so into her, and like showing these like videos of him like dancing at the Taylor Swift concert. And I'm like, how things change. Oh, how the tables have turned. Like, what is happening?
How do you feel about Matty Healy now, Jenna?
Well, okay, I think you bring up some really good points about the like almost it feels like redemption of it's like, oh, he's just like being a boy, because everyone is adoring Gabriette and like she's like participating on online conversations when she like absolutely doesn't have to, by contributing, making a lot of, usually she's like posting cooking videos. But I do agree, like you bring up an interesting point in regards to this kind of like, oh, see, he's just being like a sweet, caring boyfriend. And really the thing is that he's just shut the fuck up for the past like 6 to 9 months. Cause I remember they were here for Austin City Limits like music festival and they were headlining one of the weekends. And so that was a really big deal for them to be headlining. And we were kind of like, okay, like he's at a festival. Like, is he going to say anything? Like he's in Texas. Like if he wants to talk about politics, like he should probably do it here of all places. But this was at the point where the fandom was so mad at him that barely said anything on stage. They basically just played the whole thing. He had one commentary about like, oh, we've always played in Austin since because of South by, like we've always played in Austin. And he told like a little remark about it, but he shut the fuck up on stage and like literally just played. And then we haven't seen him on social. He like deactivated Truman Black or whatever. Now Truman Black is back as of like very recently. So I think it's just, I feel like he's never not online. He's just maybe seeing what people are saying and is like, can I like slowly reemerge? because he definitely is shit posting. He just hasn't posted any like crazy.
Well, he did. He
pushing
posted that one weird Twitter thing about boy genius, and said like girl R word.
That was from a while ago, though.
Was that? It felt like it was so recent.
That happened months ago.
I like don't know what time it is.
Because he was on Twitter for a while.
Yeah.
Like on a random ass account, and then fans figured out it was him.
Yeah.
But I think I think he just always does that because he was like, oh, end of an era, like I'm deleting my account again. He just always does this. He just goes away for a while, and then everyone's like, great, now that he shut the fuck up, we can enjoy him again. It's true. It's true.
Interesting. Yeah. I find him fascinating, honestly. I find that I enjoy watching him. I mean, me and you, Sarah, have had long conversations whenever there's, shall we say, a flare-up.
Yes, a flare-up I think would be a good way to describe it.
Healy instigated activity.
Yes.
But I guess from a, like, someone who is the lead singer of a band kind of point of view, it's like this strange, like, is he faking it or is it real?
Right.
Kind of deranged masterclass in keeping everyone's attention.
Yeah.
But I'd say they set the precedent of that with those really cryptic kind of posts that they did, even honestly as early as the entry into the second record.
Yeah.
It was like, are they splitting up?
Yeah.
And it was just that kind of, I wonder if they felt empowered or if he felt, because the other guys don't really have the same sort of profile as he does in terms of just how he communicates on socials. But I wonder if they felt like every step of the way it felt like emboldened to be more provocative or just to dig deeper into the kind of role he seems to be playing. I've said to Sarah, he seemed, when it was really kicking off, it was like he'd found this pocket of like his own philosophy of like how he can operate, of this, like, I'm playing a rock star, playing a rock star, playing a rock star kind of thing.
Right.
Which I'm not saying is an excuse for any of the kind of more unsavory things or more contentious things.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all trying to figure out and no one's really sure of, because the last tour they did for this album was he did the whole skit of like, what is a liberal man, and like eating the steak on stage and like all this stuff and like talking about masculinity. And so like our stance has always been like, he's having conversations that not a lot of people are willing to have and not a lot of people of his size are willing to have. But then at the same time, it's like, he clearly thinks about these things deeply, but then he goes and like pushes buttons that he shouldn't be pushing. And then like the fans get mad. And then he's like, I can't believe you're mad at me for this when I'm trying to stand up for you. And then we're like, no, you don't understand. But it's just like it's like a never ending cycle. And I think I agree with what you're saying. It's gotten to the point where it's like, how much of it is acting and how much of it is real? And like, is he doing it as a persona on stage? And honestly, it's kind of bringing up whichever one of the Sprouse twins, probably Cole, because everyone hates him, was on Tumblr and then was like, oh, this was just an experiment for like my NYU class or like whatever it was.
Cool. Yeah.
It feels like is it going to come to a point where we get to that?
I think there's an element of, there seems to be a certain type of personality that seems to really understand what it means to keep like attention. And I think it's not just exclusive to music. When I think of music, of people who keep you guessing always about what the fuck they're going to do. Doja Cat, Lil Nas X, Matty Healy. But we've seen how in other spaces, especially in politics, like you have no idea. Like Trump's unpredictability is what's so intoxicating to some people and so horrifying to others. You could say that Boris Johnson in a way, but less, well executed. But also he knew when to actually leave. But there's this kind of certain type of personality. If you can just get over, or if you can weather the storm of negative opinions, or maybe it's not even weathering the storm, maybe it is just being so sure of yourself or so arrogant or so confident, you can really push yourself into so many people's peripherals. You could throw Kanye in that. I mean, I don't think Lil Nas X has done anything particularly. When I think of Lil Nas X, I think of an artist who pisses off all the right people.
Yeah. We talked about him recently because he just dropped a music video for a song J Christ, and like there was backlash
I saw
it.
That.
But like, I think Doja Cat is almost a better comparison to Matty Healy than Lil Nas X is, because I think Lil Nas X, like, he got famous off of TikTok doing like Old Town Road. And I think it's, well, for me, it's really easy to forget that like that's what he came from.
Yeah.
So I think Lil Nas is just like programmed to like have virality because he just knows how to like do things that are provocative, but not actually saying anything very deep. Like, I don't think there's a
Yeah.
lot of substance to anything he's actually doing. Whereas like Doja Cat is someone who makes very deep art, like very thoughtful, profound art. And then she opens her mouth and everyone hates what she has to say. But sometimes
Yeah.
she opens her mouth and she's being silly on TikTok Live and people love her. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's more similar to Matty Healy in regards to like, I mean, Doja Cat definitely has said some probably more questionable things than Matty Healy has as far as her connections to like incel depths of the internet. But I feel like it's the same thing of like her art is so good. And we're at a time where I think people are willing to separate the art from the artist a little bit more.
But it's also like what fans are willing to put up with. And like we talked about this a lot when it came to the whole like Matty Healy, Taylor Swift fiasco, where it's like people who don't understand anything about Matty Healy who aren't fans of the 1975, they don't understand like what the base level is. And I'm not saying that that makes the base level of being okay with how Matty Healy acts and talks about things is that acceptable. I like question myself a lot of the time of what I'm okay with him saying because I'm like, well, no one else is saying these other things. So, you know, you kind of make excuses for somebody when you're a fan of theirs. And I feel like the Doja Cat thing is also interesting because it seems like she and her fans have like a mutual hatred for each other, but like, but like some fans are like more willing to put up with it, while others will be like literally on their fan accounts being like, "You dumb bitch, you would not have a career without me." And she's
Yeah.
like, that's what you think." And they're like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking about?" And so, Matt, I'm curious for you, like as an artist, like when you think about this stuff and you see these things happening, do you ever like panic about like what you're doing, and like if you need to think about it more and how you interact with fans and like that whole sort of part of the Amazons?
The one thing I worry about, or is, are we? I feel like we've taken our time in terms of like establishing the relationship, because the one thing we felt really like allergic to is just like outwardly naming a fan base, or like outwardly doing this line that a lot of artists seem to be doing of without you we're nothing, it's all about the fans,
Yeah.
blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Like, I didn't have any conception of what fans or an audience would be when I picked up a guitar
Yeah.
and started learning it and came up with bands. Like, it really, ultimately, we're not doing it for a specific audience. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I love about alternative music. Usually, the beauty is that it really is comes from such an internal place. Like, if
Yeah.
no one came to any Amazon shows, we definitely would be still doing them, because that is genuinely what we love to do.
Yeah.
And if people want to come for the ride, that's amazing. It's been a journey of like working out like what the fan base or the audience of the Amazons, like how do we interact, like mostly on the online spaces, like
Right.
mostly on like social media, like how do we interact with them, because it's easy to interact with people in real life when they come to a show,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because you see them after the show and you hang out and you talk to them and you get really familiar with lots of people,
Yeah.
especially on tours, because you know the front row is almost the exact same people every show, so you
Yeah.
know them by names and you know about what's going on in their work life or at school, or you know
Yeah.
about their family and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. That's so easy to navigate.
Yeah.
But online, it's all about like, how do we be genuine? How do we be authentic?
Yeah.
Don't want to infantilize these like real whole people.
Yeah.
It just always makes me a bit sick, or like it really just gives me a sour taste when you see people just playing up to the fans and it doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah.
But there's some artists who are really good at it and they've profited massively.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we had less shame in that regard, would we be further on in our careers? But we do have shame.
Yeah.
And would you actually say that the lack of shame in other spaces has helped others' careers,
I
like
mean,
in political spaces?
I think in lots of spaces, like lack of shame help. I mean, especially politics helps people, but I think it's like an interesting thought to think about when you think of fan bases and music too, because like there are certain artists who have bred very toxic fan bases where like if you like the artist but you don't like them a certain amount or whatever, it feels as though like you're not welcome there and like in that space, and it's like very apparent to people. And that was also another thing that was interesting about the whole like Matty Healy Taylor Swift situation was like there were a lot of like POC fans of both who felt very alienated during that time because it's like a lot of things that Matty Healy has said have been kind of racist, not even kind of, just blatantly racist. And like, you know, like Taylor Swift is very like white feminist coded. Like that's just a factual statement. And so it's like these fans are out here being like, hey, listen to me. This is why I'm telling you, like, I don't like that they're dating. This is why I'm telling you XYZ. And there are literal like Swifties, like white girl Swifties in comments being like, well, why did you ever think you belonged here anyway? And it's like, that's crazy. And it's like one of those things where, again, I feel like once an artist gets to a certain size, like they don't have control of their fan base. So you can't necessarily blame the artist. But I think also once an artist gets to a certain size, it just becomes like a capitalistic hellscape. And so
Yeah.
it's like all about money and the bottom line. And so they're not even thinking about what their fans are doing. And they're not even like, and even somebody like Taylor Swift who does all like the Easter eggs and like makes her fans feel involved, it's like it's not the same how like you guys and the Amazons like would be having your fans be involved in things on the internet because you can actually see what's happening. Whereas somebody who's that big, like they're not seeing what's happening, so to them it's not happening. And it's like I don't know how to remedy that issue, but I feel like there should be, especially now with how big the internet is, like some sort of situation where like artists are aware of what the fuck their fans are doing in their name.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the incentive isn't quite there if you're packing out arenas and stadiums and stuff. It's almost like don't poke the beast.
Yeah.
Because it's doing its job ultimately. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, there might be fans of the Amazons who are like, oh no, there is inner fandom politics at shows and stuff like that we aren't that privy to.
Yeah.
I would say actually where we found our home or where we felt really comfortable in interacting with the fans is on our Discord.
Oh, cool.
I'd say I would recommend any. I mean, I'm not in a massive position to give advice or anything like that, but I would suggest picking up the Discord as soon as possible if you're a new artist, because that's such a great feel. There's like almost like a privacy to it, which I quite like. And me and Chris and Elliot were just like logged on at all times and kind of take part in the discussions, and it feels organic and it feels actually authentic rather than just chatting about fans like on Instagram stories and it's gross. But then we don't feel like we're using them.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many, artists who, I don't know, they like scream and shout and sing outside of their own shows to thousands of people. It just feels like look at what we're doing, look how many fans are outside, we're just close to fucking road or whatever. Yeah. It's just marketing and we're shit at marketing.
So I think like the interesting thing here is like, I think for artists of all size, navigating like what the fan relationship looks like is a little bit complicated. I think also just kind of coming full circle for a moment, like thinking of artists like Matty Healy and Doja Cat and Kanye, it's like, I think everyone wants their art and no one wants to hear what their actual opinions on anything are. Like, I feel like that's the common theme of all of them. Like some people should be great artists and just be quiet at all other times. And I think that's even evident in how much people still love the Smiths and how much of a dick Morrissey is and all of those things too. But in thinking of fandoms having a lot of power and having a lot of say, we do have Taylor Swift in the news this week because there have been AI images essentially of like Taylor Swift's face being used in pornography, as well as like some other clips that were floating around Twitter to the point where they had millions of views. Twitter shut off like you could not search Taylor Swift on the platform, and really things going into chaos, and Taylor obviously being someone who is so controlling of her image, being very, very upset about this.
It's crazy because these images were seen like 45 million times before anybody stepped in to do anything about it. But also, if you think back, like I don't even remember how many months ago this was, or even if it was years ago at this point, but there was like AI porn of like Billie Eilish and like Selena Gomez and like a lot of like famous women. And I know Jenna, like she told me before recording that this was like a really big issue in K-pop as well. And so it's like this thing where like we talk a lot on the podcast about how like, I don't know, like people like Ariana Grande complaining about people talking about her quote unquote private relationship that she's like having out in public. It's like you're a public, like people, like famous people are public figures. And so to an extent, like the public has access to them and like commenting on them and talking about them and reporting on them photographing them in public spaces, like it's all legal. But like making fake porn of people, like that's not what I mean when I'm like, oh, you're a public figure, you need to suck it up. Like it's insane. And like the fact that like it took Taylor Swift, like this happening to Taylor Swift, for like the US government to start paying attention to this when this has been happening to not only famous people, for years, and also not only to famous people, but to like normal everyday people for years. And it took Taylor Swift. Like Jenna and I privately have had lots of conversations about like the power in which Taylor Swift has. And we talked about it on the podcast too, especially in relation to like that Time Person of the Year feature that she had, where like the journalist who wrote it was like, oh, like who am I to correct her narrative? And it's like, you're literally a journalist. That's literally your job. Your job is to like push people and ask questions and try and get more out of them and like try and get them to explain themselves. And like Taylor Swift has such control of her narrative to the point where the government is like, oh, something bad happened to Taylor. Like, we need to handle this. Like, it happened with like the Ticketmaster stuff with her fans. Yeah. And now it's happening with this. And it's like, okay, I'm super grateful that a conversation's happening, but the conversation should have happened at least 3 years ago.
Hopping off of that, I mean, the Ticketmaster stuff, like the same issue was happening with a lot of stadium-sized tours. Like this happened with BTS, this happened with like Post Malone, I think, and like Bad Bunny, and then loads of other artists who were not even that big. Like the Ticketmaster issue had been going on for a long time, but I'm saying like in regards to like using BTS and Bad Bunny as an example, people on her level who fandoms were already dealing with this, why suddenly is Taylor Swift the one who's able to like stop this whole thing, which I think is wild. And I mean, it just adds to the story of the government finally paying attention now. Part of the conversation is the power that Taylor Swift holds specifically. And she also just became a billionaire solely off of her music. And then the other part of the conversation is this idea of AI art and what's happening with the future of AI art and things like this deep fake porn being used and the government like doing nothing about it until this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I can speak to probably as a male would be that all the AI stuff seems to be like with ChatGPT, especially a lot of the discourses around how it just essentially just reflects the biases and behaviors of people, humans, anyway. So the thing with the AI porn with Taylor is that it was alarming, weird, shocking, but not very surprising.
Yeah.
And I'd say that if there's a possibility to do it, then there's going to be some sick dudes who are going to basically do it. And I would say there's a problem with that. Obviously, AI, I don't know much about it, except from just what we're being fed through mainstream media anyway. I keep tabs on it very lightly. I think when I've heard the AI music that's come out, it's a bit shit, but it's going to go somewhere that is probably going to be very, very good. Yeah. But I think that it's probably a deeper problem with the male population and our relationship to women and female identifying people. I think I'm a little bit disappointed about where we're at, if I'm honest. I thought it was probably I thought by 2024, I thought we would have been a bit further along the line now. I think there's probably some obstacles in the way of that.
Yeah. So Sarah and I have been talking about, what is going to happen post Barbie summer, because last year there was like this really big moment for having feminist conversations in a public setting with a lot of people who aren't used to having feminist conversations. And so what Sarah and I have noticed through the course of doing this podcast is that whenever something great for women happens, the next year something really bad happens. And it's like one step forward, two steps back. And I wonder, I've kind of been waiting to see what is going to happen this year. I think there's going to be some kind of backlash. And in the US, it's also an election year. But I mean, even just this issue of like AI stuff being largely unregulated, like what is the government supposed to do? Like sue every person? Like it's nearly impossible to track down. Like they're going to have to crack down on people who are like ChatGPT, like generators and stuff like that. But also like revenge porn, essentially, of, oh, women, you think you can have such a great year? Actually, no, you can't.
Yeah.
It's just power, isn't it? It's leveraging societal, constructs and using it for power, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's you basically took the words straight out of my mouth, because it's like, we're having the same thoughts about it because it's so true. It's like these men on their computers with their AI generated porn, like, I don't know, their porn apps that they're making this on. It's like they're seeing these women in power, they're seeing them have success, and they're like, how do I take them down a peg? And it's like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
and it's like the other thing where it's like Taylor Swift is a human. Like this is going to hurt her because like why wouldn't it, you know?
Yeah.
But like
Mm.
also at the same time, it's like this random dude at his computer. How much is fake porn of Taylor Swift really going to affect her and like her career and like that kind of mindset of things? And so it very much so is just like these random men wanting to feel an act of power over a woman that they don't think is deserving of whatever
Yeah.
success that they have. And I think
That's
like
very
that
true.
is an even more frustrating thing on top of all of this, where it's like, it's really fucked up that this hasn't been taken care of. Like, it's really fucked up that we even got to the point where like AI is this accessible to like the average everyday person. But like, on a more base level, it's just like you have these sick people on their computers, like hiding out inside, doing these things where they're just like, oh, like I'm going to feel in control of Taylor Swift. And it's like, that's so messed up because like the past week at my job, like there have been at least 3 instances of paparazzi photographing the same Taylor Swift stalker outside of her apartment, and he's been taken to
Right.
jail every time, but obviously not remained in jail because he shows back up at her apartment. And it's like,
Mm.
what? Like,
And
what?
yeah, and I mean,
What
also,
is that
this is
about?
also coming at the same time when she's more famous than ever, which like I think we're all just continuing to be surprised how famous she can possibly be. But with her dating Travis
Mm.
Kelce,
Yeah.
her being in male-dominated spaces, and this is the backlash that she's receiving for it.
Mm. And I think it's worth, like, we can talk about the individuals who created the AI art, but you said, that was news to me about had 45 million
Yeah.
Yeah.
views on X, and no one goes on X. So that's pretty extraordinary. I say that as if I don't go on X. I am on X all the time. And I did see it trending, but by the time I'd, gone on Taylor Swift trending, it was basically, the feed was almost exclusively, this is bullshit, don't look at it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I happily didn't stumble upon it, as for some reason X is somewhere you can stumble on some really fucking weird stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's that's tip of the iceberg, I
Yeah.
would say. The massive elephant in the room, I personally believe, with absolutely no evidence whatsoever, social science,
Yeah.
that ever, just, no, don't have any evidence. It's just a hunch that I think one of the big roadblocks to, I guess, equality, or males respecting females and identifying females, would be porn, and how massive it is.
Yeah.
It's insanely huge, and absolutely no one talks about it.
Yeah.
None.
I mean, we've honestly, like, it's never really crossed our conversations until this point.
Yeah.
Until
Right,
I
Sarah?
came on the show.
Well, no, so we talked about it once with Paris Hilton, and I can't remember
Oh,
why
yeah.
it came up,
Well,
but we did talk about it briefly.
I mean, was it that like early 2000s episode?
Yeah.
I mean, when we were just talking about Kim Kardashian and
Yeah.
like Paris and how she became famous and stuff.
Yeah. Well, also because like in the Paris and the Kim situations, especially the Paris one, she leveraged it for her success, where it's like, oh, this really horrible thing happens to me. I'm just going to leverage this for myself. And like, I think also because it was pre like internet era as we know it, it was a lot easier to control the narrative. Whereas now it's like impossible to control the narrative. It's impossible to stop something from spreading. Like things can just like go out there. And so then it's like this thing where, like, in a sense, it's like when I'm reading this and then seeing the thing about this Taylor Swift stalker, it's like, well, I can't rape her, so I'm gonna make fake porn about her. And it's like, that's how I'm gonna control her.
I mean, also, I think as we've been saying, like, this has kind of been going on for years, but it's like on dark corners of the internet. And this is the first time that we've seen it cross over into the mainstream with being on Twitter and really kind of being part of a larger audience that's participating in what this is. Because otherwise, you have to be like specifically searching it out to find this type of content.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And now X seems to be a platform where this stuff can bubble up pretty freely without any sort of response until, tens of millions of people see it.
So the other part of this conversation and thinking about AI and what is happening and like just how little many of us know about it is, what is AI going to be used for? And like, I've seen this conversation a lot happening in regards to ChatGPT replacing human workers, which I think is just ridiculous for many reasons. But I want to talk more about a lot of the AI generated like visual art as well as like AI generated songs that we've been seeing coming out, because I've seen a lot of visual artists more so talking about like, this is just theft. Like, this is art theft. I haven't really seen many people in the music spaces talking about it. And I think it's because it's more so like people making like Kanye covers or like One Direction covers, and less so like mid-sized artists who have been suffering from it. But like, Matt, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on any of this.
Yeah, definitely. I know that conversation is really at boiling point with writers and especially like journalists who have had all of their work like harvested, mined. I just wonder if like I think that it's a conversation that will come to music. I just think the AI needs to become slightly more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It seems to be really, really good at like creating like what I would call like on the grid beats. So on the grid, meaning like if you think of software on your computer like Logic or Pro Tools, you'll see them in almost like grids of like bars.
Yeah.
And so many beats are just a loop essentially of like 10, 20 great seconds. So that seems to be a lot easier to replicate. I'm really interested in what it will sound like when it can get to a point where it can replicate like an acoustic guitar that is played in Sound City or something, or Abbey Road, or Paul McCartney's vocals from Abbey Road 1967 that can do whatever.
Right.
I do wonder, but I would like to think that there will be a bit of resistance or like a scene that's of like incredibly organic and like analog or acoustic music that is made in response to like the
probably
super AI stuff.
Probably
Dusting off the acoustic guitar as we speak.
As long as you don't play it at any women.
I will avoid women at all points with my acoustic guitar.
So I think it's kind of interesting because I feel like what you're saying is true of like AI in regards to music is still very rudimental, whereas AI in regards to visual art, it's a lot more easily consumable medium. So it's like easier for it to make, easy to see pop up on Twitter, easy to see on, it's like AI, like visual art is easier to just consume than music is. And I feel like when there first started being AI covers, like maybe a year ago, like the first like two maybe like got me. I was like, wait, is this real or not? And then after that, you could kind of sort of tell. And I haven't really seen like that much talk about it since. And I just think music is the way you consume it is just such a different medium that like there will be a lag between script writing and journalist writing and AI art versus AI like music.
Definitely. There's something to be a little idealistic or romantic about it. There is something about like the humanity that you can hear in so many great records and the human thing, and a testament to advent of like streaming becoming the dominant way that we listen to music. So much of that is like catalog stuff. A huge amount of what I listened to was released before I was even born, let alone, which is another conversation because it is so hard for artists putting out new music to compete with the best songs ever in this same amount of clicks. But yeah, I wonder if I do kind of go towards like 60s records or 70s records because there is so much through their like limitations of technology. There's so much humanity in it that is different from the world around us.
That's such a good point. But like it really is like that's so interesting to think about, just like the humanity when it comes to like older music. And not saying that like music now like lacks humanity, but it's just a lot different because of like what we have access to and stuff. And Jenna, with you saying about like hearing these AI covers, like I feel like there were a couple of months where like every fucking week it'd be like, oh, like new Harry Styles lost song leak. It was mostly Harry. And I'm like, do you guys really fucking think this is Harry Styles? Because like there's always something about the lyrics that are a little bit off, and like the voice is always a little bit off. But I think people are like, especially fans of like that level of a fandom, are like so much wanting it to be real that they're just going to believe anything. And like that, I think, is also what scares me in regards to just everything we were talking about earlier with like the AI porn and like AI writing and like all this stuff, where it's like, if you want to believe like, oh, I found like a lost Ernest Hemingway novel, like memoir, whatever, like you're going to believe it because you want it to be true. But like at the same time, if you actually read anything, like pay attention to music or anything like that, it's like you can read an article and like it's pretty fucking easy to tell that it's AI. You can listen to a song and it's pretty fucking easy to tell. And it's like when we have even people out here like creating like hyper pop and electronic music and all that stuff where they're using the computers themselves as a human and making it, like you can tell the difference between a human made computer song and a computer made computer song. And it's just like
Mm.
it's so crazy just in thinking about that, and especially with the type of music that like you guys make in the Amazons, like it's such a specific type of music that I'm like there's no fucking way a computer could ever do that. Like I just like can't even like I can't fathom it.
I wonder if the base like AI, I guess, is kind of basically gonna, if it's making a Harry Styles song or an Amazon song, it's gonna base it on everything that's come before.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really leave that kind of room for the surprise. Like I was really floored. I was surprised. I was slapped around the face when, in a great way, when Harry put out music for a sushi restaurant. I was
Yeah.
like, what the hell? Where did any of this come from?
Yeah.
And I wonder if AI could ever find a way to do that,
Yeah. I
to
hope
make
not.
a Harry song and kind of do a 360 or a U-turn or a completely a curveball type thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where the humanity is, because you can mine all of these different, when you're a human, you live life, you experience life.
Yeah.
Someone shows you an artist or you revisit something that you really love. And I wonder if that will ever be able to be replicated. I hope not.
So K-pop industry loves to make money. So they are very much taking seriously AI stuff to the point where there are members of groups, and also there's a whole group themselves that have debuted AI K-pop idols. Like there's this group called Mave that's literally just for AI
That's crazy.
idols. So the K-pop is very much like exploring this and figuring out what it looks like, and I've heard conversations in that realm. But I just think like and I part of the like pro of having a K-pop idol is that they don't age. Like they can make them do whatever they want. So essentially they could generate money forever for fans. And like it looks pretty realistic. It's just like a little uncanny valley, you know?
You wonder if in the future there will be a separation in terms of like, oh yeah, what's your music taste like? Well, yeah, I mostly listen to AI stuff. I don't know, it's really dependable. It does exactly what I want. It matches my mood or whatever. And then you get more of the pitchfork purists who are like, I don't listen to AI music. I listen to exclusively human-made music.
Yeah.
And there will be a differentiate. There's like tribes that kind of segregate in those camps.
I think there's going to be less demand for this. I really don't think there's going to be demand for this at all, really. Like it's not going to replace going to concerts. Like music is just such an immersive art to consume on like so many different levels. Like there's so many senses that go into it. It's not just a visual medium, and like it's never going to replace going to concerts. Like that technology is going to be years, decades if we're talking about holograms and robots and stuff like that. Like I think the music industry is less at risk of any sort of AI messing with anything. Other industries that are more like written, text-based or image-based.
Right. Yes. You can totally see how AI could put thousands of extras out of the job, and then the whole industry around extras. Yeah, I can see that definitely. I can definitely see that. I have seen the ABBA Voyage show.
Yeah, how was that?
It was actually amazing. it was yeah.
He's like, I actually fucking love the AI concert.
Oh, so good. It was emotional, actually. It was emotional because you never imagined that you would see an ABBA concert. And then, you're surrounded by 5,000 people just screaming the words to SOS or whatever.
So was it
an AI concert?
Is it hologram? It's holograms, right?
Yeah, they're holograms. I don't know. I'm sure AI was involved in some way, but it wasn't exclusively AI. Well, actually, maybe it was. I mean, maybe someone in the know would be like, yeah, it's artificial intelligence. So I saw like a kind of making of documentary, and it had ABBA, it had dancers in those kind of suits that you see with all the sensors on that you see people do for like games or Avatar or whatever. So they do all that kind of thing. And there's like a live band that accompanied them. It's amazing. It's like a purpose-built arena. The ABBA.
Well, so I mean, then maybe you're kind of disproving my point of like my opinion being like, I don't know if it would ever be replaced. And you're like, well, actually, this ABBA concert was really great. But then it's the conversation is people like historical figures. And then it's like figures who have died. And it's like, when does their image just keep getting used forever, and who has control over the yes or no
that's
of
terrifying.
That is terrifying because you're disrupting the cycle then.
Yeah.
Like the cycle. I saw the man who is the voice of Darth Vader.
Yeah.
He sold off basically the rights for his voice, essentially. James Earl Jones did a deal with Disney, I believe, to say that even when he's dead, they can use his voice for all the Darth Vader stuff. Which I know it's like such a niche specific role, but you're disrupting the flow. Like you're supposed to die, and the mantle is supposed to be passed on to someone else.
Even with Kendall Jenner, just like they debuted like an AI influencer that's literally like Kendall Jenner that she like agreed to do. And I think at a certain point, like the conversation becomes a lot of capitalism and consumption, because Kendall Jenner doesn't need more money. No. And she, like, even if she dies, like, it's just hoarding wealth. All of this is just hoarding wealth. Like, who reasonably needs that amount of money to be paid to like do something like this? And especially when you're that famous, like, what does that say about capitalism? What does that say about us as consumers? Like, I don't know. That opens a lot of doors.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll be so frustrated and angry if we're in our 60s and we're being advertised products by a 20s Kendall Jenner. That would really piss me off. Leave us alone. All due respect, of course. But yeah, I agree, like how much more it feels like, I mean, this is something, a phrase been talked around, especially in the UK for a decade now, of the rich getting richer. But here we are, the middle, it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah.
Middle class being squeezed. And the thing with like uber rich people have no taste.
True. It is true. They can't relate. They can't relate to the real world because they've never really been in it. And like and if they were in it, they've been trying to escape it the whole time. And we just like live in this weird fucking place of like, at this point, it's like you're either just like the middle class doesn't exist anymore. Like, let's be real.
Except for
like,
except for Matty Healy, who lives in his concrete bunker.
Even Matty Healy is doing this nonsense, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's so many layers to all of this, and it's like so much to think about just in regards to music and fandom and like everything really, because it's like it's scary just to think about on lots of levels. And I'm just like, there were so many like creepy movies I feel like when I was a kid about like robots taking over, where I'm like, did we learn nothing? Like I don't understand.
Oh, the other day I was at the gym and they were playing Day After Tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Which is the climate end of the world movie. And I was like, this feels illegal. This movie needs to be outlawed. Like we do not need to be seeing this movie anymore, because this is like a little bit too much of a reality these days. Well, I think this conversation has opened like a lot of really interesting doors and just wildly different areas of thought, from feminism and how men are perceiving women to all of this AI stuff that we just don't have a lot of answers to. So thank you, Matt, for coming in and weighing in on the show today and sharing all of your thoughts with us.
Well, thanks for having me. I hope I offered a different, worldview. I hope I was opinionated enough. I agree with you on a lot of stuff, and that's a problem. I'm going to try and be, if I ever come on, I'll be way more contentious. We'll get some real juicy podcast debate.
That was a really great conversation. I'm very thankful that Matt came and joined us and gave us his perspective on everything. If you guys have any thoughts or feelings as per normal, you can come chat with us on social media. We are at Name3Songs on all platforms. If you have any beef or grievances or love you would like to send either my way or Jenna's way, I'm at Sarah_Fagan on all platforms. Jenna is at Jenna_million. So with all that being said, thanks for joining us this week on Name3Songs. And until next time, never let anyone make you feel bad about your favorite band.
And remember, you're never too cool to listen to the Amazons.
Don't forget to subscribe to be notified when each episode comes out, and leave us a 5-star review. They really help.
If you want to find out more about anything we discussed today, you can visit name3songs.com.